Our next lesson is estimating the quotient using compatible numbers. We need to know what compatible numbers are in order to be able to do this lesson. So let's take a look at compatible numbers. Compatible numbers are numbers that are easy to compute mentally. So when we're thinking about compatible numbers, if we're thinking about multiplication, those would be things like 7 times 5, which would give us 35, or we would have something like 9 times 3, that'd give us 27. Those are our basic facts, things that we can solve really easily. When we're thinking about division, compatible numbers are our basic facts, numbers that we can solve really easily. So something like 14 divided by 7, that would be a basic fact. That would be something that was compatible that we can solve by just thinking about it really quickly. We could also have something like 36 divided by 6 would give me 6. Compatible numbers would be when our divisor goes into our dividend evenly. When we can take our dividend and break it into even pieces without having anything left over. Now, the title of our lesson is Estimating the Quotient Using Compatible Numbers. When we were doing multiplication and we were estimating our product, we would see something like 217 times 4. And so what we would do was round our number first, so we would round to 200 and multiply times 4 to make this problem easier for us to solve, also to give us an idea of if we're in the right range for our answer. When we're estimating our quotient, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to use compatible numbers to help us. If we see a problem like 371 divided by 5. I don't want to round. What I want to do is think about my compatible numbers and think about my facts, my basic facts that I know. So I'm going to underline my first two numbers, whatever two numbers are in my greatest place values, and I'm going to think about my divisor, and I'm going to think, what facts do I know? What does 5 go into evenly? What can I split 37 or a number close to 37 into evenly 5 times? Well, 5 does not go into 37 evenly, but it does go into 35 evenly. So I'm going to take this number of 371 and I'm going to change it to something that's compatible with my 5. I want these numbers to be easy for me to divide, and this is going to give me an idea of if my actual quotient is in the right range or not. So I would take my 371 and I would think about my two numbers in my greatest place value and think about my divisor and what's a compatible fact that I know. 350 divided by 5, that gives me a basic fact that I know right here. These are compatible with each other, and that would give me a quotient of 70. That means 355 split into 5 equal groups would give me 70 in each group. This would be my estimate. My estimate would be 70. Now, if you thought about, maybe you didn't think about 350, but you thought about 400, you could have thought about 400 divided by 5. You also have a basic fact right there, or compatible numbers, in the 40. 5 goes into 40 80 times, or 5 goes into 400 80 times. That means if we took 400 and split it into 5 equal groups, we would have 80 in each group. Either of these estimates would be fine. They would sandwich our actual quotient, but either of these answers are using compatible numbers to solve. Let's take a look at a problem like this. We already have compatible numbers here. We did this lesson a few lessons ago, so I want us to remember what we're doing when we see something like this. We're going to underline our basic fact. So we have 9 and 63. 9 goes into 63 evenly. That means 9 can break 63 apart into 9 equal sections. How many times? 9 times what gives me something that's close to 63? 9 times 7, and then I'm going to take this 0 right here and bring it on over here. So if I took 630 and split it into 9 equal groups, I would have 70 in each group. This has compatible numbers already, so I don't need to do anything with my numbers. My next problem, I have 253 divided by 6. I need to find compatible numbers. So I'm going to start by underlining my two numbers in my greatest place value, and I'm going to underline my divisor. And I need to think, does 25 split evenly into 6 groups. Or I can think about it as does 6 multiply times anything to give me 25? Well, no, it doesn't. But I can think about my 6 facts. I can think about my multiples of 6. Does 6 go into anything that's close to 25? Sure, it goes into 24. So I'm going to use compatible numbers, and I'm going to change my 253 into 240 divided by 6. When I do that, my compatible numbers allow me to get an estimate. I'm not rounding, I'm looking for things that are compatible, my numbers that my divisor will go into evenly, or my dividend will spread out and equally separate into 6 equal groups in this case. So now I can find my basic fact. I have my 24 and I have my 6. 6 goes into 24 4 times evenly, and then I have my extra 0 right here that I can bring on over. And so my estimate would be 40. I want you to try this problem. Underline your two numbers, the greatest place values, and think about your 8. What's a basic fact, a compatible fact that you can think that 8 goes into evenly, or that you can split up into 8 equal groups? If I'm looking at 79 and I have a divisor of 8, there's not anything that I see with my 79, but how about if I went up by one number to 80? That is a compatible number. So I can take my 795 and change this to 800 divided by 8. And this is going to be a basic fact, a compatible number that I can divide into evenly. 8 and 8. Well, 8 divides into 8 one time, and then I have 2 zeros left over. So my estimate would be 100. Maybe you didn't think about that though. Maybe you thought about 720 or 72 because you knew that 9 went into 72, or 8 went into 72 evenly, and it went in 9 times. 90 would also work as an estimate. Which one is closer though? This 100 is a lot closer to our actual quotient. This 800 is a lot closer to our dividend that we're starting with. So I would go with my 800 if I want a closer quotient. Next problem, we have 2,153 divided by 4. Underline those two greatest place values. What's a compatible number that you could change 2,153 to? I could change it to 2,000. When I underline my two numbers in my greatest place value, I have 21. 4 does not go evenly into 21, but it does go evenly into 20. So I would change 2,153 into 2,000, and then I divide by 4. 4 goes into 2,000, or 20 rather, 5 times, and then I have my 2 zeros that I can bring on over. So I'd have 500 as my estimate. That's my closest estimate. Maybe you thought about 2,400 divided by 4. You could have thought about that. If you looked at your compatible numbers there, this would have given you an estimate of 600. We have 3,701 divided by 5. Underline your two greatest place values and think about your compatible numbers. I have 37 and 5. 5 does not go evenly into 37, or 37 does not break evenly into 5 equal groups. So what number does that's close to 37? Well, 35 does. So I have 35, and then I have two more place values I'm going to cover with zeros. So 3,500 divided by 5. That is a compatible fact. 35 and 5. 5 divides evenly into 35 7 times, and I'd have my 2 zeros I would bring over. This would be a reasonable quotient for me. Maybe I didn't think of 3,500, and instead I thought of 4,000 divided by 5. I could have thought about this as well. I'd have 40 and 5. 5 goes into 48 times, and then I'd have my 2 zeros I'd bring over. So another reasonable quotient would be 800. My actual quotient is going to fall between those two values. Let's take a look at some word problems. How could we apply this? A car travels 187 miles in 3 hours. About how far does the car travel each hour? One of the things I want us to notice about this problem is it does say about. When we're talking about about, we don't want the actual answer. We just want an estimate. Now let's think about this problem. Our car, we have a little car, and it's going from 0 miles traveled all the way to 187 miles traveled. And it's doing that over the course of 3 hours. Now my problem is asking me about how far does it travel each hour. So if that's 3 hours, I would need to take my 187 and break it into 3 pieces. So this is a division problem. I'm going to take my 187 and divide it by 3. Now because I want to know about how far does it travel each hour, I'm going to use my compatible numbers to find an estimate. I'm going to underline my 2 numbers in my greatest place value and underline my 3. And I want you to think about this. About how far does our car travel every hour? Well, when we look at these 2 numbers, our 3 does go into 18 evenly. So that is a compatible number. So instead of changing my 18, all I'm going to do is make that ones place a 0. Now I have some compatible numbers that I can work with. This makes it super easy for me to find my estimate. 3 goes into 18. How many times? 6 times. And then I bring my 0 over. So about how far does it travel each hour? About 60 miles. And I use my compatible numbers to help me there. Our next word problem says, a dog's heart beats 520 times in 5 minutes. About how many times does a dog's heart beat in 1 minute? Think about this problem. What are we going to do? Well, it beats this many times, 520 in 5 minutes, and I want to take that 5 minutes down to 1 minute. So I'm going to be doing some division. I also have my word about here, which tells me I'm finding my estimate. So I'm going to divide 520 divided by 5. Now I don't want my actual answer. I want an estimate, so I'm going to use compatible numbers to help me. I'm going to underline my 2 greatest place values in my divisor. 5 does not go into 52 evenly, but what does it go into evenly? About how many times does a dog's heart beat in 1 minute? 5 goes into 50 evenly, and I'd bring down my last place value. So I have 500. 5 goes into 500 100 times. So my estimate would be about 100 beats per minute. Let's take a look at one last problem. Logan and his 3 friends divide 171 pieces of Halloween candy. About how many pieces of candy will each person get? All right, what's your division problem? It tells us to divide, but what's our division problem? We have Logan and his 3 friends. So we have a total of 4 people that we need to divide 171 by. It tells me about, so it's asking me for my estimate. So I'd set up my problem 171 divided by 4. And then I'm going to use compatible numbers to find my estimate. I'd take my 17 and my 4. 4 does not go evenly into 17, but it does go evenly into 16. And I'd use that to help me find about how many pieces each person's going to get. 4 goes into 16 4 times, and I'd bring my 0 over. So each person would get about 40 pieces of candy. Okay, takeaways from this lesson. Make sure we're using compatible numbers. Underline those 2 place values in your divisor, the greatest, or your dividend, the greatest place values. And then think about, can I split that into even groups, however many even groups my divisor is asking me for. That's our lesson for today. Tomorrow we are going to start doing some long division. See you then.